Hello and welcome to the Field of Streams podcast for Friday, September 30th. I'm your host, Dylan Higgins, joined by my co-host, Brad Johnson. Brad, how are you doing this morning?
I'm good. It's a little sad. The season's coming to an end. Today's the last day I'm going to be doing any DFS work, so hopefully I hit it big.
Yeah, are you retiring from the DFS game entirely or just for
No,
the
no, no,
season?
no, just for the season. I don't do
Yeah,
football except for whatever free stuff they throw my way.
sure.
So
Yeah,
that's actually turned out all right so far. I've put in like 50 cents of entries and I've gotten I think $40 back out of it.
you
I
can do
just
worse than that. Yeah.
had I don't know anything about football. Like I haven't followed it in years. I used to be really into it, and so I mostly just picked guys at random, and I had a really good lineup.
You're a
I was in
natural,
week two.
apparently.
The
For
Stephon Diggs had a big game.
You're a natural for free football games. Well, yeah, like you mentioned, today is our last show as well of the year until the off season. Yeah, and we're doing another live Friday morning show here to close things out. Brad and I are. Brad, you got one more daily grind invitational going on too, right?
Yes, and I've bumped it up to 20 users. I'll be spamming it on Twitter. We're going to get those 20 users, and yeah, it'll be a nice last hurrah to the season for us.
That'll be fun. So we're gonna look at games for Friday the 30th, and as September baseball got really weird, I feel like late September baseball got extra weird. Looking at DFS stuff as like teams start to clinch and wind it down, you see a lot of starters
It's
going like,
challenging.
yeah, starters going like 3 innings and stuff. Like it's weird. Some lineups that don't make a ton of sense. But I did want to bring up one thing from yesterday, from Thursday, that was the weirdest to me, is the Pirates and the Cubs ending in a tie. Did you see this, Brad?
Yes, they tied, and it's funny. Yahoo didn't know how to handle it. They gave them both losses.
I think a lot of places don't. They forget you can do it. The last one was in 2005, so it's been a decade since a tie happened. They can happen. They really only happen in late September when they
Right.
decide games aren't going to be made up. You know, this game doesn't really matter on the standings. Forget it. But yeah, it was the first tie since 2005, and I'll admit I forgot it could happen. I mean, I wasn't sure it couldn't, but I forgot it was a thing, and yeah, had a tie in Major League Baseball. I don't think they bother putting it in an extra column or anything either, but the stats count. It happened, and I thought that was weird. Um, Brad, do you have anything else before we get into these Friday picks?
I understand there was some nonsense in the Cardinals game too.
Yes.
The Reds might be able to protest up until noon, so they got another hour.
Yeah, it. My dad was talking to me about it. I didn't see it live, but
Yeah, I didn't either. I haven't caught a glimpse of it. I just saw like right before jumping on this podcast that there's some
my
brouhaha over it.
my understanding, it was a fellow on first base with like 2 outs in the ninth for the Cardinals, and a guy hit a walk-off home run. But then when they looked at it, it wasn't a home run. It hit a sign above the fence, which is very clearly a ground rule double. So the runner should end up at third. But both teams had basically walked off the field and into the dugout by the time the Reds went, wait a minute. And they like tried to come back out and challenge it, but the umpires told them it was too late to challenge, even though it was the last game of the last play of the game. And the umpires were like, we waited around for a bit, nobody challenged, so we left. And by the time, everybody had left the field or whatever, I guess there's an unofficial time of when you can challenge the last play of the game. And so
Yeah,
the Reds are upset about that, and man, what a mess. I mean, part of me is part of Team Entropy, is excited for maybe a challenge and protest of what's going to go on, but it sounded like an unfortunate mess for sure.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. It keeps the Cardinals alive too. They're
yeah,
two back
yeah.
of the Mets, I think, and one back of the Giants.
Yeah, there's all
Their
the
photo
divisions are locked.
finish.
Yeah, all the divisions are locked up. That's kind of
Yeah,
boring, but the wild card stuff is still enjoyably messy. And this is where you get that appreciation for this new wild card system. Where you're like, good, there's still baseball to play for right now, which may not have been true 5 years ago or whatever. All right, so we're gonna look at games for Friday the 30th. Again, these lineups are kind of messy. The pitching matchups are kind of messy, but it's fun. There's still DFS to be played for. It's chaos, but you can still play games. So, Brad, let's get started at catcher. Who are you looking at catcher on Friday?
So before we dive into the picks,
Mhm.
one more thing to note: weather is going to be an issue today.
Okay.
The Boston game looks pretty likely to be postponed from what I was seeing this morning. Things can change, obviously. There's actually a total of 7 stadiums at risk of getting wet today.
Funny.
Uh,
Yeah.
so New York's one of them, and it's also the first place I'm looking at catcher. Gary Sanchez and Brian McCann. McCann is the cheaper version, probably the less popular version too, and he's almost as likely to home run off Giovanni Gallardo as Sanchez, in
Mhm.
my opinion.
Yeah. No, I
So
like that a lot.
if that game's dry, and it might not be, you might not be playing baseball in New York today, but if it happens, that's looking like a good place to start for either option in that game.
Yeah, this is another one of those problems of doing a daily podcast. Is I'm not sure what's going to happen later in the day, even when we do a live one. It comes to weather. Matt and I often have trouble recording the night before, and then the starter changes the next day. It's like, oh, we're sorry, we didn't know that. Yeah, but keep an eye on your lineups and especially on your weather reports for those things. But I think that caveat should apply most of the time. Who else do you like at catcher?
So whoever the Cubs are starting, Wilson Contreras or Miguel Montero, I would assume, are the options today.
Mm-hmm.
They're up against Josh Smith, and I'm going to be talking about a lot of Cubs today. I'm sure you will too.
Mm-hmm.
Smith is not a particularly good pitcher. He's pretty bad against left-handers in particular, but also not great against righties either. Games at Great American Ballpark, it's one of the ones that's supposed to be dry. So again, this should be a very popular stack, and so one that's worth targeting.
Yeah.
Even if you're going to be sharing it with a lot of other people, it should go off.
Yeah, popular for good reason. You know, Josh Smith, nothing special. Reds bullpen, record-setting bad. 250 plus homers allowed so far, something crazy for that
Yeah,
staff. So, yeah.
and they've gotten better as they've leaned more on Iglesias and Lorenzen to do multi-inning relief.
Mhm.
But still, those are two guys who they get in there on close games. We're not really anticipating it being all that close with Josh Smith starting.
Yeah, no, that should be fine. Any other catchers for you sticking out to you?
If Tom Murphy starts up against Brent Sutter, not Bruce Sutter, Brent
Mhm.
Sutter. If Tom Murphy starts, good homer threat, very affordable, 3,100 on DraftKings. I think cheaper than that on FanDuel, and the matchup's really nice for him if he's playing. It's
Yeah,
just a matter of getting in the lineup.
yeah, very playable. I think the Brewers might have some trouble in Colorado over the last weekend. I have Sandy Leone down against Marco Estrada because he struggled so much. But like you said, the Boston game, I have a lot of Boston hitters I like against Estrada, but it's going to be hard to bank on with that weather. I wrote Sal Perez, get him Adam Plutko. Can you tell me anything about Adam Plutko?
I could as of yesterday. It's kind of fled my head. If you give me a moment, I can refresh
Yeah,
myself.
I suppose that you're ready to pick against him with any Royals hitters you like. Yeah.
Yeah. There's no reason to really shy away from him. Yeah, he's a standard swingman guy who decent numbers in the minors, but nothing spectacular.
Mhm.
Might be able to hold his own, but probably won't most times.
Yeah.
And that's where you're looking at. He also hasn't pitched more than he has 2 spot relief appearances in the majors.
Yeah. I'm not that excited about Sal Perez, but I would imagine that he could hold his own there in that matchup for sure.
Yeah.
And then, are you at all interested in Jose Lobaton getting Andrew Kashner? Jose Lobaton filling in for Wilson Ramos being out, but he's a switch hitter, and Andrew Kashner has been so bad against left-handed hitters. I know Lobaton's not exciting, but cheap catching option. Are you considering this mostly to pick on Andrew Kashner?
Yeah, it works as a punt.
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with it.
Yeah, it's not exciting. Again, like Sal Perez, I'm not like really pumped about this pick. But if you're looking to go cheap at catcher, I like Tom Murphy, but I would consider Lobaton or even Sal Perez too. Any other catchers for you?
I think that's about it.
All right, let's roll on to first base. Brad, who are you looking at first base for Friday?
Well, you mentioned liking Red Sox. If that game happens, this is the classic position to use them with David Ortiz and Hanley Ramirez,
Mhm.
both fine matchups against Estrada. Assuming we need to go somewhere else, we have Paul Goldschmidt against Edwin Jackson. I think that's going to be pretty popular for
Mhm.
those who save the money. I like a Padres stack against Braden Shipley. It should be fairly unpopular. Usually is. They got plenty of good left-handed hitters. Will Myers, of course, being a righty, he's kind of the trend away from all those lefties that you would use. But still, high ceiling, high floor guy. Not quite as good in the second half here, but still putting up some big games. Mm-hmm. And he's looking like a nice monster for a middle of their lineup going forward. Also like I mentioned Cubs. Anthony Rizzo is actually fairly affordable on DraftKings. He's like the 10th most expensive first baseman at $4,600, and he's kind of an auto start if he's in the lineup for me. I don't see how you can stay away from him at that price and that situation. Great American Ballpark. It's too good.
Right. If it was a pitcher, you might be worried about how long they're going to go, especially with everything clinched up. But with a hitter, it's not like they're going to stop him from letting him go, most of the game, if not the full game, and should hit fine. You're into that, right?
Sure, you might lose a plate appearance at the end, but that usually means he's already gone off.
Yeah. I'm into that. If he's affordable, that's a great play there for sure. Do you like Freddie Freeman getting Jordan Zimmerman? Jordan Zimmerman feels kind of torched at the end of the season, right?
So I've seen some conflicting reports, but I'm pretty sure it's Daniel Norris today for the Tigers.
Okay.
I think that's the play. Some sites have not updated from Jordan Zimmerman. I don't know if they have information that I don't, but what I've seen reported today is that Norris is pushed back to today. So that's going to be a lefty on lefty, and Freeman's a little less interesting to me at his price against a lefty.
I agree.
He's 5,400 on DraftKings, which is quite a lot.
That's too much. Yeah. I'm looking at ESPN's schedule right now, and they have Zimmerman.
Yes, ESPN's one of the sites that I noticed. I had to do a double take.
They're usually pretty good.
I was in the process of writing up, who was it? It was someone. I was writing up someone as, Matt Kemp.
Yeah.
Writing up Matt Kemp against
If he gets Daniel Norris, I'm interested,
And I went on ESPN to look at the pictures. I'm like, Jordan Zimmerman. Why did I pick Matt Kemp?
All right. So keep an eye on that Detroit one, whether you want to pick on the righty or pick on a lefty. How about Jose Abreu getting Tyler Duffy? He's struggled, all year. He's especially struggled against righties. Abreu should be just fine there, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
It's an easy target.
Yep. I have Eric Hosmer getting Adam Plutko. Again, any Royals that you halfway like his hitters should be fine. And Hosmer's the best one. And then I had the Cardinals first baseman getting Tyler Glasnow. That's, Brandon Moss, Matt Adams. Tyler Glasnow's okay. He's going to be good, I think. He definitely has a career ahead of him, but has not done a ton in the majors so far, not going that deep. They're out of it. You ready to pick on Glasnow?
Yeah, I don't have any qualms with that.
Yeah, it's not exciting. He's not a total beat-em-up pitcher, but I think any hitters that you like can be just fine in that matchup. Are there any other first basemen for you?
A couple worth mentioning. You can go to the Orioles against Michael Pineda. So that's Chris Davis and Pedro Alvarez.
Sure.
Both multi-homer threats any given day, and Pineda will give up home runs. It happens. He has his bad days, and even his good days tend to have bad innings. Yeah. So there's definitely potential for some run production there. And then Chris Carter's at Coors Field.
Sure. That's all you need, right? Yeah, Chris Carter's playing Colorado. Yeah, I'm totally down with that. Absolutely. Okay, let's get on to second base. I had 7 names. Second base has felt nice and deep lately. Plenty of places to go. Brad, who are you looking at second base?
That's a good question. There are a lot of names to go at for me. And a lot of them at the top of the scale, too. So I'll just run down them quickly. They're very expensive. You're probably not going to afford them. DJ LeMahieu against Brent Sutter. Trey Turner against Andrew Cashner. Robinson Cano against Raul Alcantara. Jose Altuve versus Daniel Wright. Jason Kipnis versus Yordano Ventura. These are all gold standard second basemen with great matchups. And for the most part, they're in good situations, too. Altuve and Kipnis are in very pitcher-friendly parks, so they're a little less exciting, but they're also the cheapest of those super expensive types. Scanning down a little further, there's Matt Carpenter. He's up against Glasnow. Brian Dozier is obviously going to be very popular at U.S. Cellular Field facing a lefty.
Yeah,
We all know
absolutely.
how he is against lefties. And then I'll stop after a couple more. Ben Zobrist bats cleanup for the Cubs. Great American Ballpark, it's a nice little bandbox. His power certainly plays there. He walks more and he strikes out. Very high floor guy, good for 50-50 type lineups, and even good for GPPs. So I like Zobrist a lot, and he's affordable on both sides. And then Ryan Schimpf, I like his multi-homer potential. He's in Arizona.
So he's a fun GPP pick often. Might give you a 0, but he can definitely connect on him, have his big games. I'm into that. How about Gene Segura getting Edwin Jackson? Mr. 200 hits. Like, he's had kind of a crazy year in the desert. You considering that?
It's fun to use. I see a little day-to-day thing next to him. Let me read what that's about.
I'm not up on Gene Segura. That could be
is a cramp in his left rib cage. I don't think that sounds very serious.
Check and make sure he starts. They don't have a ton to play for. They can certainly rest him. But if he's in there, he gets Edwin Jackson. I'm totally fine with that for sure. Do you like Rougned Odor getting Matt Andriese? I'm like mildly interested in Matt Andriese here. Are you ready to pick on him?
Yeah, I pick on him when he starts. He's just not very good as a starter. The stuff takes a tick down and becomes hittable. Out of the bullpen, he seems to have a nose for keeping the ball soft hit, and kind of goes away when he's starting.
Yeah. The only other name I had, Dustin Pedroia getting Estrada, but again, good luck. Hope they play. If they do, I'm into that. But lots of other places to go at second base. Do you have any other sneaky picks or anything? Is that about it at second base?
Derek Dietrich, if he's in, he'd probably be playing first base if he plays, but listed as a second baseman on DraftKings.
Yeah.
So he's up against AJ Cole.
Dietrich's whatever.
Returning, and Cole's just fine. He's whatever. So he's a cheaper option. And then Jonathan Scope also, if you're looking for that home run production, up against Michael Pineda.
Sure. Yeah, you can definitely run into one, especially against Michael Pineda. It's fine. All right, on to third base, I had a few names. Kind of like second base, third base feels really star-studded. There's just so many, big names there that you can go with. Manny Machado, it's Michael Pineda. That's fine. Chris Bryant going to Cincinnati, like that's fine. Not quite the same kind of slugger, but like Jonathan Villar and his bajillion steals gets Chad Bettis, a different kind of point production, but
at Coors too.
He's at Coors, that's fine. Nolan Arenado on the other side against Brent Suter, like he's going to be fine. All these expensive guys, I'm into that. Not quite the same level. I have Kyle Seager getting Raul Alcantara. I assume you're fine with that as well.
Yeah, I have no issues with that. I think you can go after Alcantara pretty wholeheartedly.
And the last third baseman I had is Jose Reyes getting Alec Asher. And I know Reyes prefers lefties, but I assume you're not intimidated by Alec Asher. And Jose Reyes should be just fine at the top of the lineup, right?
Yeah. Asher is a spot starter type. He's put up a good ERA so far after a few starts, but there's a lot of smoke and mirrors in there.
Yeah. Those are my third basemen. Again, I didn't have any sneaky ones written down. I had all the studs. Who are you looking at third base?
I spaced out for half a second, so I'm not sure if you mentioned Arenado and Bryant, but Arenado and Bryant, thumbs up. Yep. Going a little deeper than that, Yangervis Solarte, nice matchup against Braden Shipley. He's switch hitter. Shipley's bad against lefties, so he'll have that advantage. He bats cleanup, so he's got that going for him too. And really like that matchup. If the Braves continue to hit, Adonis Garcia usually bats second, and I don't know how the Braves keep hitting, but they do. And Norris has looked better lately, but that doesn't mean he's immune to bad starts.
Yeah, no, I'm into that. That'd be fine. I don't know what's up with Adonis Garcia lately either. He's doing okay. The Braves finishing strong. They gotta feel good about the way it's ending. Beyond that, I don't really have too many cheap guys you can really go with. Solarte's really the bargain play that I have. Yeah. Any other third baseman for you?
I think that's it.
Yeah. Okay. On the shortstop, I had 5 names as usual. It's a little thin. Or it's the tough position for me. Brad, how'd you do at shortstop?
Well, I had VR here as a
Okay.
shortstop, so that's clearly the top option to me today.
Hmm.
I like Aledemy Diaz too, assuming he's active and in a good spot in the lineup. They've kind of moved around a little bit lately. A
Yeah.
nice high contact rate, high floor type with some power potential too. Uh, Also like Jose Peraza. I've been on this Peraza bandwagon for a
Hmm.
while in the second half. It's kind of funny. He's one of those prospects that I didn't think very much of. Thought he'd be the early career version of D. Gordon, kind of in a permanent sense. And I've changed my tune. I like him a lot now. I expect the contact rates to stay high and to be a higher OBP, Billy Hamilton, more than the bad version of Gordon. So
Yeah.
anyway, he's shortstop and outfield eligible on DraftKings and up against Jason Hamill, who's looked pretty bad lately.
Yeah. And I don't think he's going to go that deep. And that's a Cubs bullpen game for the most part, I think.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Yeah, I'm into that.
I
Do
would like
you?
Asdrubal Cabrera, but his price has been really buffed up by his hot streak.
Yeah. Yeah, he's been awesome. I picked him up last week in a head-to-head league just down the stretch. Why not? And he's been that hot. So yeah, price himself out. That's a fine matchup for him though against Alec Asher, right?
Yeah, yeah, it's a good one.
Yeah, if you can get him. On the other side, I have Freddie Galvis getting Robert Gesellman, and Freddie Galvis is one of these guys who uh, has run into a bajillion home runs while still being a bad hitter. They were talking about this on Effectively Wild the other day, but there's a lot of these hitters in baseball this year that have just they set a record for guys with 20 home runs. And I can't believe Freddie Galvis is 20 home runs, but guys that are swinging at everything, low OBP, but high homers, and you can play with a bunch of arbitrary stats to come up with some records there for sure. But Freddie Galvis is not a good hitter. Let's get that out of the way. He's not performing well this year, but he has 20 homers and about that many steals. There's some roto points, some DFS points to be had here. So that makes him a GPP play. Hoping they get to use some steals or a homer, but could easily over 4 on you. But
Yeah,
the matchup's fine for me.
he's one
Um,
of those lay kick guys, and it's an approach that kind of lends itself to the high power, low OBP outcomes.
yeah, I don't know what's going on, but again, there's a lot of homers going on, but again, no like 50 homer guys, not just like huge home run races, just everybody can hit 20 apparently. That's what's going on, even when you're Freddie Galvis. Um, how about Francisco Lindor getting Jordana Ventura? That should be just fine, right?
Yeah, thumbs up. Go
Yeah,
after him.
nothing special, but that's okay. And the last name I had was Carlos Correa getting Daniel Wright, which I assume you're okay with, Dale.
Yeah, obviously, I think we've had some articles on the main site. Even Correa does seem to be playing through injury, but
Mhm.
he's still fine.
Yeah. Any other shortstops for you?
Sure, a couple. Addison Russell up against Josh Smith.
Sure.
He's
Why
actually
not?
cheap on both sites. 3,500 on DraftKings, 2,400 on FanDuel. That's
That's so
fifth
cheap.
most days. It's a nice play. And then Dansby Swanson too up against Norse.
Also been just fine. He keeps hitting. Yeah.
Yep.
And Braves are trying to be a little bit optimistic, in September. The Braves are looking okay. Yeah. All right, let's get into the outfield. I didn't have a ton of outfield names, but there's always plenty. Who are you looking at in the outfield, Brad?
Yeah, so there's always plenty of places to go for outfield. Milwaukee's an option. Ryan Braun, Domingo Santana, uh,
Hmm.
Hernan Perez if he's out there. Um, they're all good choices in the outfield. At Coors Field, obviously you're going to pay for that because it is Coors. Uh, Similarly, or maybe not similarly, but the Rocky side of it, you got all these lefties that go up against Brent Sutter,
Hmm.
and that should make them kind of unpopular. Even though Sutter's not really someone you need to really run away from, even with the lefty on lefty
Right.
matchups. So, looking specifically at Charlie Blackmon, David Dahl, Carlos Gomez, Stephen Cardolo could get in there, and he'd be very cheap if he does. So those are some names to watch, and probably shouldn't have too high of an ownership rate today, even though situations really work right for them to do well.
Yeah, and Brent Suter's not going to go super deep into this game,
Right, exactly. You're looking at a 4 to 6 inning outing.
Mhm. So yeah, no, I like the weird, Rockies outfielder lefty on lefty pick. I think that'll be fine for sure.
I mentioned Matt Kemp. He's got something close to 1,000 OPS against lefties still.
Yeah,
11 home runs and 140 some plate appearances. Uh, you know he's going to be aggressive. You know he's going to be swinging out of his shoes. So that plays really well for a GPP type pick, where you do want your guys to put the ball in play and swing for the fences and try to get those double homer days. Uh, Kemp's probably one of the best options to do it, and he's a bargain on FanDuel.
hmm yeah, no, I like that. We talked about him earlier this week, and that he's having quite the fantasy season, especially against lefties.
Yeah.
I don't know that he's having a good Major League Baseball season.
No, he's Jermaine Dye. You know,
yeah,
he can't play defense and he only hits home runs.
yeah.
And it's fun to watch, but it's not good for actually winning games.
Is he Yasmani Tomas? Similarly,
Yeah, he's also Yasmani Tomas a little bit. Tomas somehow hits for a higher average, but
yeah. Yasmani Tomas, you like look at all those home runs he has, another 20+ homer guy, and then you like look at his WAR and you're like, wow, he's bad at the other parts of baseball. Like,
yeah, he's really bad at it.
Yeah.
Kemp, I feel like it's more like a laziness type thing. Like he can be good. Like every once in a while, you'll see him make good plays. Tomas is just really bad.
Yeah, I mean, and to be fair, I always got to do this caveat. When we say really bad at baseball, we mean the most incredible baseball player we've ever seen in our lives, but then compared to, Major League Baseball, very, very relative. But yeah, not going so well in terms of Major League Baseball against other average players. Yeah, but, it's still productive fantasy players, still can hit you some dingers, and that helps in DFS and whatnot, so... I like this Matt Kemp matchup for sure. If he's getting Daniel Norris as reported, that should be fine. Who else are you looking at in the outfield, Brad?
A couple Tigers, JD Martinez, Cameron Maybin, Justin Upton too. Anyone you want to throw into that mix works against Matt Whistler for me.
Yeah.
The downside at being in Atlanta, no DH, and Atlanta's actually playing as one of the best pitcher parks this season.
Yeah.
Usually it's a little more middle of the road, but this year at least it's been very pitcher friendly. So it's not the best situation, but again, Whistler's has his bad days, and Tigers' offense is still scary.
Yeah, I can see that. I'm into that for sure. Anybody else sticking out to you in the outfield?
There's a couple Rangers you could use. Carlos Gomez is the one that really stands out, batting leadoff.
What's going on there?
It's a funny story. The Astros dump him in the middle of their playoff race, and he goes ahead and gives Rangers all they need to win the division.
He's been awesome.
Yeah, it's really funny.
Like a lot of stat-friendly people or just baseball fans, like the Astros have been fun. I like rooting for the Astros, seeing them turn around, but I don't want to say it's luck, but they've had a bad time sometimes with guys they let go or guys that move on. Like, the JD Martinez thing where it's like...
That was a disaster. That was like Carlos Gomez, okay, fine. You gave up a month and a half of his, dead cat bounce.
Yeah.
It's still like you look at the numbers and he's obviously connecting and hitting for power, but there's a lot to worry about in there still.
Sure. But even like the
losing
trade
Martinez, though, that was awful. And Jonathan VR, that's another one that they could really use him in the outfield. There's no reason he can't be their starting left fielder or something. Yeah,
it's just I think they're a very smart organization, but there are things you're just like, ouch. Imagine if they had VR and I don't know they have room for all these guys, but JD Martinez and. Yeah, Gomez.
They're a little too willing to deal from the fringes of their roster, give up on guys a little too quick.
Yeah, well, that's part of having such a stuffed roster. They have a bunch of good guys and more on the way, so you got to make room for them. But anyway, Carlos Gomez, don't know what he's doing or how he's doing it, but he's hitting well for the Rangers, and he should be fine against Matt Andriese, like you said. Do you like the Baltimore outfield getting Michael Pineda? That should be just fine, right?
Yeah, same reason I like them at first base and second and third.
It's Yankee Stadium, and that's a pretty decent outfield. They'll be fine. Christian Yelich gets AJ Cole. AJ Cole's whatever. Christian Yelich should be fine there, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
I
I don't have
wrote,
a problem with that.
yeah, my our favorite Phillies outfielder. You like Roman Quinn, and he's interesting, but Odubel Herrera gets Robert Gesellman.
Yeah, Quinn's hurt too, so
Yeah,
Quinn's always hurt. This is not a new thing with Rowan Quinn,
yeah,
but he is out again for the season.
but Odubel Herrera should be just fine there against Gesellman.
Yeah, the one thing I've noted about Herrera, and I don't really know why this is the case, he tends to have a very high price, subject to or relative to his actual
What he's
talent.
actually doing. Yeah. It's that Philly bias or something. I don't know.
I don't know what's going on with that, because
Yeah,
there's like plenty of guys who are like in the same situations. Like he bats at a good spot in the lineup,
mhm.
but that's true of a lot of guys who are bargain priced and hitting just as well or better than him. So
Mhm.
it doesn't really make a ton of sense to me.
Yep. And then is Alec Asher bad enough for you like the Mets outfield? Granderson, Cespedes, Bruce.
Yeah, I could go after, but I think I'm out on Bruce.
Yeah,
I think they should be out on Bruce too, to be honest.
you'd think so. Yeah, he's also no defense. Whatever OBP hits some homers. Like okay, that's all right. I wrote Dexter Fowler, but you can take any Cubs outfielder you trust against Josh Smith, right?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, Cubs will be fine. My favorite Minnesota Twins outfielder against Carlos Rodon is Robbie Grossman. Crushes lefties. Should be just fine. It's fun to be. Also a former Astro. He's
Yep.
not as on fire, but Robbie Grossman should be just fine in Chicago.
Yeah, I think they regret losing him a lot less than some of those
Yeah.
other guys.
Not as big a deal, but he's helping the Twins, doing okay. I have the San Diego outfield getting Braden Shipley, especially
Yep.
crazy Hunter Renfroe. Should be just fine there. And then the last stack I wrote down was Mariners outfield getting Raul Alcantara. Seth Smith is fine. Obviously Nelson Cruz and Nori Aoki making a second half for himself for some reason, hitting down the stretch. It's a weird pick, but he's doing it, and I like bringing that up. It's Raul Alcantara. It should be fine. Brad, were there any other outfielders for you that we missed?
I mean, there's always more outfielders. I think we've covered enough of them.
Sure.
Closer to game time, you'll be able to find some interesting bargains. This being late September,
Yeah.
the guys who you never expected to play and are suddenly batting leadoff.
Yeah,
So
especially
keep an eye
against mediocre pitchers. Sure. All right, and then
there is actually one. We have to mention Enrique Hernandez against Madison Bumgarner, because
you know what we do. We
it's
do.
the classic matchup now. He's
'Cause
11
he
for
looks
22
off.
against Bumgarner with 8 strikeouts. So
You said
it's
11
all
for
or nothing.
22? Oh,
Yes, 11 for 22, 8 strikeouts. If it's
I like
in play, it's a hit.
I like that. Yeah. Oh boy, that's a crazy.
4 home runs and 3 doubles too. So it's not like he's bapping in the death. He's mashing the ball.
Yeah,
and I don't really think that's a real thing. Like
but it's fun.
just something that's fun and exciting. But he's also
He hits
super
lefties.
cheap on both sites, so you can go ahead and pop him in there and hope for the best.
He hits lefties. That's his skill. I don't know why Bumgarner, but he hits lefties. Yeah, and the Giants bullpen has been such a mess that why not? All right, let's try and figure out some of these pitchers, because so many guys are just at this point either resting up or spot starting, and got to find some actual bona fide guys that are going to go. So I wrote Rick Porcello getting the Blue Jays. I don't love the matchup in general and might not start anyway, right? So,
Yeah, the rain's a big issue there.
Yeah.
Even if the game does start, it's the best case scenario is that it's delayed for a while and the weather clears out, at least from what I'm seeing right now. And that way he'd still get his full start.
Yeah. I think the big pitching matchup is, the last game on the slate, Rich Hill and Madison Bumgarner. At this time, Rich Hill is on the schedule. You never know if he's going to get bumped or moved off by game time, as I say, as a frustrated Rich Hill owner. But he's supposed to start against the Giants. Both of them green light. Other than Enrique Hernandez, should be fine for both, right?
Yeah, so for me, Bumgarner's the top pitcher of the slate. The Giants are desperate. Their bullpen has been shaky. They want Bumgarner to give him a complete game.
Yeah.
They're going to want to ride him, and get everything they can out of him. Rich Hill, on the other hand, is definitely making a tune-up outing. Wouldn't surprise me if he cruised through 4 innings and you saw the bullpen.
Yeah.
It's they don't want to aggravate that blister at all, and at the same time, they want to keep him at least a little bit sharp for the postseason.
Yeah.
So Bumgarner definitely the play over Hill for me, and I really don't see Hill going too deep in this one.
Yeah, that makes him tough to make him an option. Kind of an incredible pitcher, kind of a frustrating fantasy guy, just because he's so leashed, understandably. How about you, Darvish, getting the Rays? That's a green light for you, or are you worried about that?
I don't know how deep he's going to be throwing either. It's another tune-up outing. He can. It's possible that he'll go 5-6 innings against the Rays, rack up 10 strikeouts anyway, and still be worth his price. But he's the most expensive pitcher, and it's with a pitch count probably something around 90 pitches, 95. I don't know that I'm really eager to pay that much for him.
Sure. Yeah, if you have question marks, it's hard to take the most expensive guy. How about Carlos Martinez against the Pirates? Carlos Martinez on a team that is playing for something.
Right.
They're still in it. It should be going. Yeah, you okay with that?
Yeah, that's another one that I think he has to do well for his team, basically. So they're going to want to get what they can. Unlike the Giants, the Cardinals bullpen is pretty reliable. So they may end up having a quick hook, or if he's really cruising, they might let him go a little further than normal. Typically, you're going to get about 6 innings out of him, quality start.
Yeah. After that, it kind of tails off. There's not a lot of reliable ones. Are you okay with Taijuan Walker getting the Oakland A's?
I wouldn't say that I'm okay with it, but it certainly has a high ceiling.
Yeah.
He's like the Matt Kemp or the Chris Davis of pitchers.
Oh, that's fun. Yeah, he's a volatile guy. Sometimes he is locked in and it looks really good, and sometimes it is real frustrating. There's a ceiling there for sure. That's interesting, but the matchup with the A's is okay with me. I'm fine with
the same's true of Michael Pineda. I really treat them very similarly in my usage of them because they're such high ceiling, low floor guys.
Yeah. For Taijuan Walker's sake, I hope that comparison doesn't hold up, but I understand. I know what you're getting at, and I don't think that's crazy at all. Not quite the same. We're kind of stretching our comparisons, but Carlos Rodon getting the Twins, you okay with that?
Yeah, I'm a little more comfortable with it, except the price is much higher. That's my biggest concern. And then there's also rain in the forecast in Chicago, and they're not going to really let him pitch through rain or any kind of delay. And that's one of the big issues with today. I mentioned there's 7 stadiums with rain. For the most part, all of these guys, if you get anything more than like a 15, 20-minute delay, which is basically the time it takes to put a tarp on the field, run off, and then immediately take the tarp off, those pitchers are going to be out of the game. No one's going to mess around with that.
Yeah. So it feels like our pitching slate is Bumgarner in the field, trying to find better options past that. Last name I had, you don't, so no on Andresi. Andresi, interesting guy, but not as a starter. I don't
think it works as a fade. You're trying to go out there and get something that other people aren't in on, because he does have good command and he does give you like 7.5K per 9. So on a lucky day, he goes 7 innings, gives up 1 run, and gives you 5-6 strikeouts, and that's a nice little day for a Rays pitcher. That said, I don't really see the offense giving him run support, and I think the most likely outcome is more in the 4 to 5 run range.
Yeah. The last name I had written down for being interesting is Brad Peacock getting the Angels. Brad Peacock's been okay so far. Kind of always been a whatever pitcher before with a little bit of intrigue. But so far so good this year, getting some strikeouts and the Angels or whatever. Would you consider Brad Peacock going to Anaheim?
Yeah, he's on my list of options. Peacock's a funny one. He years ago, I think it was like 2013, he was interesting because he threw 94 miles per hour, and that was super hard back then.
Right.
The game has very, very much changed in a few years.
Yeah.
So now he's not really a flamethrower per se, but finally starting to come into his own as a pitcher a little bit. And it looks pretty good down the stretch. I'm not sure I'd be counting on a sub-3 ERA. But against the Angels, he can certainly do that.
Yeah, yeah. And honestly, that's about the end of my pitcher list. Can you help me out? Are there other guys here that you're interested in on what is admittedly a tricky day?
Yeah, two more guys. So Daniel Norris, we talked about him a little bit in the opposite perspective of Braves. They're certainly a hot offense, and it's tempting to continue going with that hot hand. Norris has looked better this year. His command has taken a step forward. I wouldn't call it plus by any means, but it's average or better now, and the past it was below average. So that's a big gain for him. He's got good stuff still. The Braves aren't really as good as they've been in the second half. Talent-wise, if you go player by player, it's not that scary of a lineup. It just happens to be clicking. So when you see something like that, it's an opportunity to try to get someone who might be unpopular and still has a decent high ceiling. Norris probably won't go beyond 6 innings, though. That's the biggest drawback to using him.
Yeah, and it's a former top prospect. He's an interesting guy. It's not a nobody. So there's talent there. I can see that for sure.
And then Robert Gisselman, he looks pretty good. I didn't know what to expect this year out of him, but he's pitched well. Recently pitched against the Phillies. Is pitching against them again today. Last outing was 7 innings, 3 hits, 8 strikeouts. They cut him loose for 107 pitches. If he's looking sharp again, I don't see why they wouldn't cut him loose again. They're trying to protect a small lead in the wild card race. So everything's on the table. He's cheap. He's got as good a ceiling as just about anyone not named Bumgarner or Darvish, and situation's nice.
I like that. That's a good pick, especially if you just did that against them. That on such a thin day, that makes them an automatic option. I feel like that's a good matchup. This is definitely, I think, our thinnest Friday we've had so far.
Yeah, we rifled through it pretty quick.
Yeah, all the end of the year, and like you said, the options are kind of weird for sure. Brad, let's take a look at these last 2 days of the year, Saturday and Sunday, because they're going to be weird, especially Sunday. But who's sticking out to you Saturday? I have, Clayton Kershaw supposed to pitch in San Francisco, but, depending on how the standings are looking, he, might go 3 innings or something, right?
Oh, yeah, that's going to be a short outing. They probably want to give him like 80 pitches, I'm guessing, which Kershaw can parlay into a long outing.
Yeah. Are you interested in Jarrell Cotton going to Seattle at all? 4 starts so far, and he's looked good.
Yeah, he's one of the more interesting guys to watch tomorrow. He's making a case to be in the rotation next year, and I didn't really expect that to really be on the table for him. But now definitely it is. I'll still have to pitch well in spring, but taking a step forward.
And then anybody else sticking out to you on Saturday? Looks interesting. Again, it's kind of a hodgepodge, but...
So I like picking on the Brewers, and I like using Tyler Anderson at Coors Field because it's super unpopular, and he pitches fine there.
Yeah, he does.
So I like this Anderson versus Brewers matchup a little bit. It's something that, definitely volatile, but it should be unpopular and could provide about as much value as anything else.
They have guys that can hit lefties, but I believe in him. Matt and I have been picking him a lot down the stretch. Yeah.
The other game I'm interested in is the Blue Jays and Red Sox game, J-Happ versus Erod. Eduardo Rodriguez has actually pitched pretty well since rejoining the team in August, and he's one of the, if memory serves, he's one of the better contact managers in the league right now. So looks like he's getting back on track. He has his share of meltdowns. He just comes out flat some days. And so should be interesting to watch. Could be a big scoring game or it could be a low scoring game.
Yeah, and you got to hope that matchup doesn't get affected if Friday's game gets postponed,
Well, if it gets postponed, you're getting a doubleheader probably tomorrow.
That's probably true. Yeah.
It depends on when the Red Sox have their Fan Appreciation Day scheduled probably. Yeah. I'm guessing they don't want to double up that one.
Yep. And then Sunday, they're doing the really fun, bizarre mess of a last day of the season schedule where all the games are at the same time, which is just like chaos, and it's fun. It's going to be a mess, but it's going to be fun. And we see the schedule now 48 hours in advance. Who knows in terms of the starting pitchers, who's actually going to start or how far they're going to bother to go. But I mean, you see Noah Syndergaard going to Philadelphia. If they're pitching, playing for something. Did you see that they were talking to Terry about this, about whether he was going to use Noah on Sunday or in their wild card game? Like, would they use him to try and get home field advantage, or would they use him in the wild card game? And Terry Collins was saying he might use him on Sunday. And everyone said, "Are you crazy?" So right now, the ESPN schedule has Noah Syndergaard for Sunday. I would not put my money on it today, but
new.
But
and
boy,
it probably just depends on how this race is shaking out too.
Yeah. Same with
they're in a good spot. They basically need to get swept in order to be in real trouble.
Yeah. Same with Justin Verlander, is supposed to pitch in Atlanta. We'll see. It depends on how bad the Tigers need to get in or not.
Well, the Tigers may have a game on Monday too, so that's additional consideration there.
Could be pitching there. See Kyle Hendricks going to Cincinnati. Yeah, right. Maybe for 3 innings.
That's a
we'll see.
Tune-up game. Yeah, he's their third pitcher, so they got to give him some work. He'll start. You can count on that much.
So again, it's 40 hours in advance. The schedule may change, but anything sticking out to you on Sunday, either from these starting pitchers or just what are you excited to watch other than these wild card races? Or what's sticking out to you?
I mean, the wild card races are what's there to watch at this point. You got a bunch of fan appreciation days where the scrub lineups are in. That's always been a funny aspect of that for me. It's like, hey, fans, come enjoy the last day of the season. Here's Eric Fry, starting catcher.
Yeah. That's here you go. Yeah. I don't have anything to add to that. You're exactly right. That's really ridiculous. Yeah, come on in, watch our bench, watch our AAA guys. Yeah.
Here's a guy who's going to make 3 plate appearances today. They're going to be the only plate appearances of his career.
Mm-hmm.
I guess the one game I'll be interested in is Joe Musgrove and Tyler Skaggs, trying to get a better sense of both of them for next year.
Yeah, I had that written down. If they are starting, they're moderately interesting for sure. Well, that should about do it for us for Friday, for the weekend, for the season. I want to say personally, thanks to Brad for joining me every Friday. I said this to Matt the other day, but making this commitment to doing a daily show is kind of nutty. But I appreciate you joining me. It's been a lot of fun. And thanks again to all the listeners for tuning in, everybody that tweets at us, everybody that follows along, blazing daily grinds and whatnot. Just the fun Rotographs community makes it really cool to do a show like this. And I know Matt and I have had fun, and speaking for Brad, seems to have been having fun. But it's been a good show. It's 2 years. This is episode 250 over the last 2 years here at Rotographs. And that's been good.
Nice.
Brad, you got anything before we get out of here?
No, I hope you've all had a good year. Hope you've either made some money or won some leagues with our help, and look forward to seeing you again next year. Yeah,
Brad is on Twitter at BaseballAteam. I'm on Twitter at HigginsFOS. There'll be less DFS to tweet about, but I'm sure we'll get to talk about Hot Stove. You can still tweet at us in the offseason. We're around. We're alive. We're not quite hibernating, but make sure to check in. Good luck with your picks on Friday. Good luck with your last couple of weird days at DFS. Thanks for listening, and have a good offseason.